This car, often nicknamed the Widowmaker, has generated both fascination and fear in equal measure. The vast majority of its owners were enchanted by it, while others were impressed by its fantastic performance. However, for some, the Porsche Carrera GT was the last supercar they ever drove. The fame of this extreme car is based on its relentless nature, a super powerful engine with no stabilization system. This forced people, even professional and amateur racers, to deeply respect it. Even so, many continued to fly at high speeds like butterflies before a flame. It was incredibly attractive and commanded respect on the road. Welcome to a new video. If you like this type of content, subscribe to our channel. It's free. Now, let's begin. Porsche's obsession with motorsports. There are very few car manufacturers as obsessed with classic motorsports as Porsche. Rally marathons, circuit races, endurance engine production, Formula 1 records, Le Mans victories. Its star performer, the great Porsche 911, has won in almost every discipline it has entered, becoming the most successful car in the history of motorsports. Every Porsche executive, at all times and opportunities, reminded the world that its technologies were among the best. In the 1990s, the era of large multi-cylinder engines in Formula First, Porsche planned to do the same. Incredibly powerful sounds from V10 and V12 engines were used, revving up to 14,000 RPM and producing so much noise that the spectators in the stands were deafened, but happy. At that time, Porsche was not only known as a manufacturer of sports goods and racing cars, but also as a creator of great engines. For the 1992 Formula 1 season,
and the way it's being driven does tend to suggest it is Volta roll at the wheel.
I guess so.
It is pushing.
Porsche created a promising 10-cylinder engine, exceptional in many ways. It had superior parameters to its 1991 V12 predecessor. It was meant to demonstrate the superiority of Porsche technology. But the problem was that all the teams were already equipped with engines, from the track to the road. The birth of a legend, so Porsche decided to use this engine in endurance racing. At the time, the Porsche 911 GT1 was magnificent at Le Mans, winning with its classic flat-six engine. However, the designers wanted to test the 10-cylinder concept. It was the only completely new Porsche built in Cologne, the Pre LP2. But here another problem arose. The company's financial situation didn't allow for participation in such a large and expensive event for a racing enthusiast. The company was in desperate need of additional funding. Rumors of bankruptcy were just that, rumors. It was the late 1990s, the era when the world was gripped by the SUV craze. These cars were selling like hotcakes. To get out of the crisis, Porsche made the only right decision. All its human and financial resources were devoted to designing Porsche's first SUV, the Cayenne. It received a lot of criticism at the time, which extended to the company itself. Where have you ever seen a luxury sports car manufacturer create a crossover? But the company didn't hesitate, and the Porsche Cayenne became a popular mega crossover, literally saving the company from the financial crunch Porsche had experienced over the past decade. Thus, the company's magnificent savings were wasted on the Cayenne's design, rather than on motorsports. The V10 sketches might have remained gathering dust in the most remote cabinets, if not for one event. Porsche was preparing an incredible surprise for the year 2000 on the streets of Paris, leading up to the motor show. Two people, World Rally champion Walter Röhrl, were driving an astonishing and magnificent supercar that demonstrated something exceptional in the world of high-speed racing. It turns out that Porsche, armed with all the racing car technologies it had collected over decades, decided to apply components designed directly for racing car gearbox and suspension elements, and that same V10 engine, to a new supercar. It found a place in this prototype, demonstrating the studied demand. There was no information yet about production, but seeing the surprised faces of the exhibition visitors, they understood that their new supercar, the Porsche Carrera GT, would go into production. Cutting-edge engineering and functional design. After numerous exhibitions, inspiration reigned at Porsche. The huge success of the Porsche Cayenne provided the company with a steady supply of banknotes, and with that money they were able to create almost a road-going racing car. The engineers weren't held back. They were allowed to apply the most advanced and expensive knowledge and technologies. And they did it brilliantly. The carbon fiber chassis is super light and super strong, weighing just 99 kg. The double wishbone racing suspension, with springs and dampers mounted completely horizontally to the body, was also borrowed from motorsport. The braking system incorporates oversized ceramic discs, which are not only very light, but also prevent overheating on a fast racetrack. To reduce unsprung mass and inertia, the wheel rims were made of lightweight magnesium. When designing the GT, no trifles were compromised. Every element had to be as strong, light, and efficient as possible. Take the clutch, for example. All supercars of that time suffered from the enormous power and torque of large engines, combined with owners' incompetence in using the clutch pedal correctly. This often led to clutch burnout. Porsche was aware of this widespread problem and manufactured a 2-disc ceramic clutch, with such strength that it allowed for record-breaking sizes. The flywheel is also very light and small, which made it possible to implement another very ingenious piece of racing technology: dry sump lubricants. Unlike a conventional wet sump system, where the oil is located at the bottom of the engine, in the crankcase, in a dry sump system, the oil is located anywhere except under the engine. Such a system eliminates the lower oil pan and allows the engine to be lowered as much as possible. All of this significantly lowers the center of gravity, improving the car's handling in every aspect. The Porsche Carrera GT is supposed to be incredibly fast, fantastically fast, and perform with incredible torque during fast cornering, braking, and acceleration. In a conventional car, oil can splash heavily. And the oil receiver fails to capture it, leading to a lack of lubrication and often engine seizure. A dry sump lubrication system, like the Carrera GT, completely eliminates this problem. Everything related to the supercar's operation in extreme conditions on racetracks was designed with a true German approach. There are no useless or over-the-top design elements here. At Porsche, they strive to impress with their engineered appearance. Every body element is functional. Functional air ducts cool the radiators and rear brakes. The rear spoiler only extends when truly necessary, after 120 km/h, 75 mph. At approximately this speed, the aerodynamics kick in. The entire underbody is molded in a special way that creates downforce and helps the supercar corner even faster. The supercar shape has a single purpose: the green hell and the tragedy of Paul Walker. It's time to talk about the engine. It would be a crime not to use it in the fastest supercar of its time. A fantastic 5.7-liter, naturally aspirated V10 that produced 612 horsepower and weighed 1,303 kg. It could rev up to 8,000 revolutions per minute and weighed just 205 kg, thanks to the use of the finest aluminum and super strong titanium alloys. An incredible engine with a breathtaking sound, just like a real 90s Formula One car. A masterpiece. Finally, with its mid-engine layout, rear-wheel drive, 10 screaming cylinders, and most excitingly, a 6-speed manual transmission, the Porsche Carrera GT became a driver's lifeblood. Almost immediately after its launch, the series was taken to the Nürburgring, the Green Hell, as racers called it. Its complexity was embraced by anyone who claimed class leadership. Porsche had to prove its superiority over its competitors. The Carrera GT didn't just run the track, it flew through it. So much so that after this, no one doubted it was a leader for many years. 7 minutes and 32 seconds, and these figures were later improved to 7 minutes and 28 seconds. Both times were undisputed records. The automotive press exploded, loudly arguing that Porsche's new supercar had shattered the era of legends like the Mercedes, SLR, McLaren. On the internet and on television, the Top Gear program broadcast a video confirming the time. The entire automotive community Simply said, the new Porsche was a race car with a civilian appearance, road-legal racing brakes, engine, and suspension. Even the gearshift lever was made as close to the steering wheel as possible to make the transfer of hand from the lever to the wheel as quick as possible, just like in a race car. The wooden knobs are a tribute to Porsche race car tradition. This element doesn't heat up as much under racing conditions. To improve dynamics, the rear-wheel drive 10-cylinder monster wasn't for everyone, according to Porsche. The supercar accelerated to the first 100 km/h in 3.9 seconds. But they were a bit hypocritical and claimed they had achieved the worst result. Often being modest is the worst. In fact, almost everyone who tested the Carrera GT achieved 3.6 or even 3.5 seconds per 100 km/h. Another surprising fact was that, unlike most supercars, the Carrera GT was suitable for everyday use. Its suspension, although stiff, was so well tuned that it didn't shake the owner's soul. The air conditioning worked, it had GPS navigation, the leather interior was comfortable and pleasant, and the multimedia system sounded good. The only surprising thing was the price. $440,000. Supercars of that time, with those prices, mostly sat idle in garages and were used only on special days. Owners often drove this car for the sheer pleasure of it. It was more pleasant to use than other high-mileage supercars, and many confirmed this. But there were also criticisms. A small trunk that could be completely filled with a removable roof, and for some, an unclear clutch pedal. When starting off, the owner had to fully release the clutch before pressing the accelerator. Otherwise, the car could stall. The characteristics of the ceramic clutch meant that replacing a burnt clutch disc cost $30,000. What would Jeremy Clarkson have been like without being awestruck by the unbridled power of the Carrera GT? He admired the supercar's temperament and heaped praise on the German engineering thinking. It was rare to recall another famous presenter who screamed with joy on the track. The Top Gear Carrera GT also set a record on the test track, posting a time more than a second faster than the previous leader, the McLaren Mercedes LCR. Of course, the supercar's fantastic characteristics were noticed by tuning studios. They reasoned that even such a powerful and fast road car could be improved. They redeemed several supercars at once, and, despite Porsche's great dissatisfaction, modified the aerodynamic body kits, altered the interiors, repainted the cars in striking colors, and, in some cases, increased the power. For example, the 9F Tuning Studio, primarily with the help of two rather large turbines, increased power from 612 to 900 horsepower. Acceleration from 0 to 100 km/h, 0 to 100 km/h, was reduced to 3.2 seconds, and the top speed increased from the stock 330 km/h to 290 km/h. Rumor has it that the owner was afraid to drive this car. The Porsche Carrera GT became a sensation in the automotive world, but as the number of these supercars on the road grew, the unpleasant stories associated with them became more and more frequent. From time to time, news reports began to appear in the press about another Porsche Carrera GT supercar wrecked by its owner under strange circumstances. Most of the high-profile cases were invariably discussed in the media. Some, like collector Benjamin Chin, driving a Carrera GT tuned at the Gembala studio, lost control and flew into parked cars on the streets of New York. The driver tried to hide, but after a few blocks, he was stopped by the police. The whole story became public. Surveillance cameras showed that the owner had seriously violated the speed limit. A similar story occurred at a California racetrack, where two men, trying to avoid a collision with a vehicle that had gone off the road and other race participants, unfortunately crashed. The accident involving television host and internet writer, better known as the host of his car, Roger Rodas and Paul Walker, became very famous. They were friends and both participated in amateur racing club events. Rodas was an amateur racer and had many powerful cars in his garage. It was Rodas who introduced Paul Walker to his passion for powerful cars. The actor became more involved in car racing and was becoming a very skilled driver. When the second Fast and Furious movie was filmed, professional racer Randy Pobbs prepared and consulted with all the actors for the driving scenes. He said Paul Walker was the most skilled of all. The rest of the actors saw a manual transmission for the first time in their lives. According to rumors, it was Paul who insisted that racing driving techniques like heel-to-heel braking and downshifting be showcased in Fast and Furious. And Paul Walker possessed such skills. He was supposed to be the main star of the entire Fast and Furious saga, but fate decreed otherwise. The actor was returning from a charity event organized by his friend, a sponsor, in which Paul Walker himself had participated. On a stretch of road where the speed limit was 72 km/h, the Carrera GT accelerated to 150 km/h. Roger Rodas was driving, with Paul Walker as a passenger. It was a sunny day, with few other cars on the road. Nothing foreshadowed trouble, except for the catastrophic speed limit. The Carrera GT was traveling at a very high speed, and suddenly lost control exiting a corner. The car skidded with tremendous force, throwing it into a pole across the road. The supercar was then thrown backward and struck by a tree, almost completely damaging it. The supercar, destroyed by the impact, froze and immediately burst into flames. The passengers didn't have time to get out. Roger Rodas and the famous actor Paul Walker died in this accident. Mr. Walker's cause of death was the cumulative impact of traumatic and thermal injuries. The deaths of these people and the accident left everyone in disbelief at the time. There were many disasters. Fans and colleagues of the actor, of both sexes, wept. Fast and Furious co-star Tyrese Gibson was one of the first to arrive at the scene, and it was painful to watch. He saw the aftermath of the accident. A charred tree with many blossoms, which showed the enormity of the disaster. Television stars expressed their condolences to the actor's family and friends. People couldn't hold back their tears. The place of the star's death became, for many months, a pilgrimage site for racers and street racers from around the world. Many of those who arrived by car carried a once famous inscription, said at the dawn of a race, "If speed kills me, don't cry." At that moment he was smiling. This accident had a serious impact. The press was filled with headlines about the tragedy. Everyone wondered how this could have happened, what happened, and why did Paul Walker's relatives sue Porsche? They demanded that the supercar be banned. The claim that it was dangerous was heard in court. The accusation was that the Carrera GT lacked a stabilization system. But this system, which slows down the wheels needed for the car, could have saved the car in skidding conditions. It was also assumed that the reason for the loss of control was tire wear. The car was 7 years old, and manufacturers recommend replacing tires 6 years after their production date, regardless of whether they are worn or not. Over time, rubber degrades. The demanding nature of the Carrera GT. But it could all have been much more banal. The Carrera GT is a very powerful mid-engine supercar, and, I repeat, all mid-engine supercars have a very important characteristic in their high-speed behavior. You should never search for gas in a corner. When the supercar is at the limits of its capabilities, the mid-engine layout is also used to fully load the rear drive wheels. If you release or simply ease off the accelerator while cornering, the car's weight at high speed is abruptly redistributed to the front axle, removing load from the clutch and rear wheels, and the car will inevitably slide. Such high-speed sliding must be extinguished instantly, with lightning speed, without allowing for any deep failures. This behavior is typical of all mid-engine supercars, without exception, from Ferrari to Lamborghini, and many others. This is especially true at high speeds, especially since the car lacks a stabilization system. Porsche didn't install a stabilization system in the Carrera GT because the customers themselves requested it. They wanted a hardcore supercar, and they got it. Already in the first Top Gear test, it was mentioned that the Carrera GT is demanding. Once, it even returned control to the driver on one of the fast laps. After the rollover incident, the driver said he had been warned about the peculiarities of mid-engine supercars, but upon entering the corner, he abruptly released the accelerator, resulting in a loss of control. Given its handling, it's a feature of virtually all mid-engine supercars. And the fact that many owners aren't aware of it only confirms that these vehicles should be driven by people with relevant knowledge, experience, and skills. Despite all its dangers, the Porsche Carrera GT became an icon of the automotive industry and has been recognized in numerous competitions for its outstanding engineering achievements. Attracted by its luxurious features, it was beloved for its uncompromising nature. The insane V10 and incredible mechanics rightly consider it the ultimate analog supercar, without a stabilization system, as honest as possible in its habits, which is why the car was favored by journalists and racers of all stripes. Owners loved it, and all those accompanying crash stories arose only because, unlike most supercars that stay in garages, the Carrera GT was used frequently and with great pleasure, both on the road and on the racetrack. Only 1270 units were produced. Changes in American supercar safety regulations, and the fact that Porsche simply didn't want to redesign the car for them contributed to its exclusivity. The supercar's beauty was recognized as the best sports car of the 2000s by Sport Auto International magazine. But it was best described by two-time World Rally champion Walter Röhrl, who said, "This is the first car in my life that I've driven, and I'm scared. But this car is the best I've ever had to drive." We've reached the end of this video. Comment in the comments, like the video, subscribe and tap the bell to enjoy future videos like this one. See you next time.